In its long-term cooperation with Africa, China has continuously formed valuable characteristics and adhered to glorious traditions. The first is not to interfere in Africa's internal affairs, sincerely provide help to Africa, and never attach any political conditions. We will not engage in geopolitical games, oppose creating camp confrontation in Africa, and oppose using Africa for personal gain. We will continue to carry out cooperation with Africa in accordance with the concept of authenticity, affinity, and good faith. We must uphold justice. Achieving modernization is not the prerogative of a few countries. African countries also have the right to development. Considering the colonial plunder that Africa once suffered, developed countries must shoulder their responsibilities, strengthen North-South cooperation, and increase investment in Africa's development.
The Chinese president has pledged to step China's support across the African continent with funding of more than $50 billion, backing for more infrastructure initiatives, and a promise to create at least 1 million jobs. But China's funding initiatives have been viewed by critics of Sino-Africa relations with geopolitical lenses, with frames insinuating that China's initiatives, projects have a hidden agenda. But this is not new, and it's not surprising at all that people tend to think this way, because in the West, European and US media outlets continue to frame news coverage of the Chinese and Africa in a colonial context, with some asking, is China the world's new colonial power? But China is aware of the criticism leveled at its investments that have been taking place on the African continent. The criticism from the United States and the EU and their media depicts the Chinese government and its banks as rapacious lenders, when in reality the US and the EU are trying to claw back infrastructural influence on the African continent. So criticizing China makes sense for them, but it hasn't helped them. For example, the upgrading of the Lobito corridor between Angola, DRC and Zambia. In response to that, China has announced the upgrading of the Tazara line. Even in the controversy surrounding Kenya's biggest project, France has been removed. The president of Kenya has now handed the deal to China. China has even signed an agreement to revamp a railway in Zambia to export copper through Tanzania. And for these efforts, African leaders continue to praise China-Africa cooperation.
We also value very, very much our relations with China. There have been strong relations for over 60 years. In fact, I think that we're one of the first countries in Africa to have established diplomatic relations with China. And ever since then, we have counted on you as one of our most reliable friends.
The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation is a great platform where China and Africa can carry out political dialogue and achieve win-win results. Agreements can be signed by both sides, particularly in financing, public fund development, and investment attraction. This enables us to better improve economic development and tackle developmental challenges effectively.
We are very pleased with the relevant measures announced by the Chinese side, which is a testament to efforts of you and China to promote the building of an Africa-China community with a shared future. China's participation can help the people of Sao Tome and Principe solve their problems.
And from the statements made by African leaders this week, you get a sense that China's vision of the global South is more than just a concept. It's a call to action. Even South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the multi-billion-dollar financial commitments made by China will not lead his country into a debt trap, assuring the stability in the country's future trajectory. Kenyan President William Ruto, like many African leaders as well, went to Beijing with a long list in the run-up to his meeting with the delegation in China, and he stressed several infrastructural projects as key to Kenya's cooperation with China, and many of those projects have been attended to. For example, the Rironi-Mau Road that I've mentioned, which is an expansion of a major Kenyan transport route, which featured prominently in these talks as well. So much that an earlier contract with a French consortium was cancelled in favor of Chinese companies who will extend the road road to the Ugandan border. President Ruto has also announced that Kenya joined the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and joining that bank will increase Kenya's access to infrastructure funding. Ruto further emphasized that the country has very warm, cordial relations with China. So essentially what we got from this forum is that African leaders are helping define the parameters of the relationship between Chinese government and Africa, and that's despite the criticism.